So this picture right here is just really special, and I wanted to share it first and foremost because this is the first time my mom and my daughter, I have a 7-year-old, met the baby, and I say met like this. So of course there were no visitors that were allowed. My son was born in July. So they came to the hospital to get one of his hats that he had worn. The nurse brought it down so that our dog could become familiar with his scent. And so then they drove around. We were able to figure out where they were and to kind of tell them where our window was. And so they came to the window and we kind of like held them up and they felt connected. So I think it was really hard for them to feel physically separated from us for so long. And so this was just a really special moment for us. So like many women, I had a birth plan. And initially I knew that I wanted a doula. I wanted nitrous oxide. I wanted my mom and my husband to be there for my delivery. I wanted to have a vaginal delivery and I did not want to have an induction. So with my daughter, I had to have an induction. I had gestational diabetes. And the induction went well, but I knew that I wanted to do something different. I guess I also should put out there that I am a 4th-year PhD student. So I am looking at the effects of racism on maternal health. So I am aware of many of the disparities and challenges that women of color in particular face when it comes to, birth. So those things were in my mind when I created my birth plan. This picture that I'm sharing here is really special because this is a picture of my daughter 7 years ago, and my mom, as you can see, was there. And that was just really important that they were bonded from the very beginning. So that was very, very important for me to have her there again. This is what my birth experience was. So I did have a doula. I ended up with a spinal, not nitrous oxide. My husband was the only one that was able to come in with me because I ended up with a C-section. So very different from what my plan was. My son ended up being transverse, but I would continue to labor, and so it became dangerous. So I needed to have a C-section, which is not at all what I wanted, especially during a pandemic, especially what I knew about the risk to myself and to my baby with C-section, being a woman of color. All of those things were going through my mind. But, it was really nice to have the doula there with me. She was great. I definitely thought it would be more of a natural experience with the doula, and we'd have like dim lights and low music, and she'd, walk me through breathing exercises. But of course, she wasn't allowed in the operating room at that time. So what she did do, which I found to be very helpful, was that she, things were moving very quickly. And it was easy for me to get frazzled, nervous, anxious. And she kind of just slowed it down. And she said, can we have a few minutes before, she goes to the operating room? She slowed it down. She took us through some breathing exercises. She held our hands. She gave us some words of encouragement. So it was really nice to have the doula there. And I know that some hospitals, depending on where you are, might not allow for a doula, but it was really, really nice to have her there. Not only was it nice to have her there, but before we went there, we talked about what we wanted, our hopes, our dreams for our experience. And then after, my son is 4 months old and I still talk to her at least once a week. She checks in with me. She asked about the baby. She asked about breastfeeding. She's also a lactation consultant. So she's been very, very supportive throughout this entire process. And this picture is just a picture of me meeting my son for the first time, which is not what I had planned. I was really big on wanting to do skin to skin, and I felt like it was important. So I advocated for myself in the operating room and asked, could I do skin to skin? Of course, it was different, but we were able to get it done. So my time at the hospital definitely had its pros, cons, challenges. So I would say the pros of giving birth during a pandemic was that I truly just had uninterrupted time and uninterrupted by family, time with my husband and my son. So with my daughter, I had lots of continuous visitors all day. I couldn't really get the breastfeeding down because I didn't feel comfortable trying to breastfeed in front of like my uncle or, in front of my stepson. But this time, and I also didn't feel comfortable asking people to leave or step out. But this time it was really nice that it was just my husband and I, and the nurses, of course, who would check on us. So it was nice that I could be vulnerable and I could, say I'm struggling with this, or I could keep trying. And that was really nice. I would say the cons, of course, was just I was nervous. I was nervous about exposure. I was nervous to get tested. I was nervous to, have people give my baby a bath. I didn't have my mom there. And this picture is a closer picture of my mom and my daughter outside of our hospital window, just there for support. And they felt like it was important to be physically close. So it was nice to just like wave to them, and let them feel like they were included in a part of the experience to whatever capacity they could. And breastfeeding, as you can see here, because I did have an unexpected C-section, my milk hadn't come in yet. So it was truly, truly a challenge. But I knew that I didn't want to give up. And so this picture is the first expression of milk that I was able to get. And we were so excited. So of course I had to like take a picture of it. So my time at the hospital obviously looked different. My husband had to stay. He couldn't leave at all. He couldn't even go downstairs to like grab food. So that was very different. But they did accommodate, partners and allowed him to order food from the cafeteria and things like that. So it looked different, but I felt like the time together that I got with him was invaluable. So coming home and cultivating relationships, as I've talked about before, my village is really important. That includes my mom, and it also includes extended family. So the first picture you'll see here is my nephew in the green shirt. And then my sister, who has been helping me since I'm working from home. So she comes over 3 days a week to babysit Jameson. And so that second picture is a picture of her talking with friends and dancing with Jameson. And then just other family members. He has become quite the FaceTimer. And I think it's important to try to find ways to cultivate relationships with family members and friends. We haven't had anyone over. We haven't had anyone meet him physically besides my sister and my mom. So it's been really important that he at least recognizes voices and just knows that he's loved. But we've found that technology has really been helpful in trying to save and still have those relationships, because eventually we will be out of this place. And I think it'll be important for him to recognize those voices and recognize those faces. So this is what we've been doing. So as it was mentioned before by most of the speakers, as moms after having a baby, we completely shift and start caring for the newborn. I think even before we have, a baby, as we're, expecting, we're always caring for other people, and putting ourselves second or even last in some cases. And I was no different. And so I came home and had an unexpected complication. And I didn't initially realize what was happening because I was just so busy trying to focus on breastfeeding, trying to get that down, trying to make sure that, we had like good routines and that my 7-year-old is well taken care of. But after 7 days of being home, I had to be readmitted to the hospital for a complication with some swelling and excess fluid. But what was funny was that the day that I went back to the hospital, I actually wasn't feeling well for a couple of days. And I said, well, I'll just take the baby to his doctor's appointment first. That's most important. And so I took him to the doctor's that morning. And then I went to the emergency room myself and ended up being admitted. And so I think that I share this just to say it is true that we can get so engrossed in trying to just be everything. And we can, miss out on signs that something could be going on within ourselves. And so this picture is a picture of me on FaceTime with my son, my 7-day-old, while I'm, readmitted back into the hospital. I think the readmission was very difficult for many reasons. One being that I had to be separated from my newborn. The second being that I had to do it alone. So because I was no longer in labor and delivery and was not on the postpartum floor, but on a different floor that was not allowing visitors, my husband wasn't able to be there for support. So that was difficult, just to say the least. But nonetheless, we're thriving and doing well. And although I struggled with breastfeeding and expressing milk at the beginning, I show this picture just to say that I kept at it. My doula has been a wonderful source of support. And I've been able to store a lot of milk while also keeping up on the daily supply for my son. So this picture is about a month in. So this is the beginning of August. This was just a snapshot of some of the milk. So it's bigger than this, but it was just some of the milk that I was able to store and save for him. And this is a recent picture of him. He's just very happy. He's doing well. And although, there were some bumps in the road with the delivery and my postpartum journey, it overall went very well.